vital meeting.
We have been trying to persuade them for some days now that it's safe, but they have yet to believe us, although it would appear that they're starting to come out of the mountains now.
The first ones to leave the mountains were those who had no choice. The sick, mostly the very young, as well as many pregnant women. To stay could have meant death. For the most urgent cases, helicopters were needed. It was the first task for 846 Squadron from RNES Yeovilton. Within hours of arriving, their seeking helicopters were airborne again, this time on their way to Sinat camp, inaccessible by road. On the ground, Marines from 4-5 Commando were already helping the refugees to pack their belongings. Another unfamiliar role for them. Hands more used to gripping guns, cradling and protecting babies instead. Helping the elderly who struggled through the difficult terrain to get to the helicopters. Even though the crews had just come back from the Gulf War, the sights that greeted them were still shocking.
It's a real eye-opener. Nothing you see on TV actually on the news prepares you for doing it for real. And it was almost a sense of unreality of being there and being surrounded by it. What was news yesterday, you're amongst today. Quite extraordinary.
Distressing at all?
Yes, especially the children. One of our last lists was mainly children, and you just feel so desperately sorry for them.
Seekings normally carry 16 troops, but the crews crammed as many people on board as possible. With the urgency of the task, the rule book went out the window.
We stopped counting after a while. We assumed that they were not as well fed as we were, so they weren't as heavy as we, and we just put as many in as we could, that the aircraft were still capable of flying with. I think in all the 2 aircraft lifted about 200 off the mountains.
As the word spread that it was safe to come down, the trickle of refugees willing to return to Iraq became a steady flow. The Commando Logistics Regiment from Plymouth laid on transport to bring hundreds of Kurds down from one of the more accessible camps. They were going back to Zaku, the first town to be freed from Iraqi control. For many of the refugees, it was the first sight of their homeland for up to 5 months, and more appeared to want to return.
Yesterday they were a little bit dubious about coming down, and we really had to coax them into coming down. But this morning we had to be very careful that they weren't overloading the vehicles. They were trying to stow away all over the place. But yes, they're very pleased to be going.